The salon de velours shimmered under crystal chandeliers, its velvet drapes swallowing whispers of London's elite. Laughter tinkled like champagne glasses until a scream pierced the air. Madame Celeste Dubois, the salon's enigmatic hostess, lay crumpled on the Aubusson rug, her sapphire gown pooling like spilled ink. A glass of burgundy lay shattered beside her, its contents seeping into the weave. Hercule Poirot, a guest by chance, noted the faint almond-like scent, poison. As guests recoiled, their faces masks of shock or guilt, Poirot's gray cells stirred. Who among them had turned elegance into elegy? Chapter 1. The salon's secret Poirot, a diminutive figure with a meticulously waxed mustache and eyes that gleamed like polished agate, was an unexpected guest. Invited by a mutual acquaintance, he had come to observe, not to partake. His gray cells, as he called them, were ever alert, noting the subtle shifts in posture, the fleeting glances that betrayed more than words. He sipped his tisane, a concession to his delicate digestion, and watched the tableau unfold. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, a florid-faced aristocrat with a booming laugh, raised his glass in a toast that seemed more desperate than celebratory. Evelyn Marlowe, the aspiring actress with a cascade of auburn curls, clutched her pearls, her smile as brittle as spun sugar. Dr. Victor Hammond, a physician with a scholarly air, lingered near Celeste, his eyes soft with unspoken devotion. Beatrice Langston, Celeste's secretary, moved silently through the crowd, her notepad a shield, her pale face unreadable. The evening had reached its zenith when a scream shattered the salon's elegance. It was a sound raw and primal, cutting through the murmur of conversation like a blade. Guests froze, glasses suspended mid-air as all eyes turned to the source. Madame Celeste Dubois lay crumpled on the rug, her sapphire gown pooling around her like spilled ink. A crystal wine glass lay shattered beside her, its burgundy contents seeping into the intricate weave, staining it with a dark omen. Her face, once radiant, was contorted in a rictus of pain, her lips faintly blue. Poirot was at her side in an instant, his small frame moving with surprising agility. He knelt, careful not to disturb the scene, and inhaled. A faint almond-like scent lingered, an unmistakable signature. "Poison?" he murmured, his voice low, almost reverent. "Cyanide, perhaps." "Mais oui, this is no accident." The room erupted into chaos. Ladies gasped, clutching their escorts. Gentlemen muttered, their faces masks of shock or something darker. Poirot's sharp eyes scanned the crowd, noting each reaction. Lord Reginald's ruddy cheeks paled, his cigar trembling in his hand. Evelyn Marlowe's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide, too wide perhaps for genuine surprise. Dr. Hammond dropped to his knees beside Celeste, his medical instincts overriding decorum, but his hands shook as he checked her pulse. "She's gone," he whispered, his voice breaking. Beatrice Langston stood frozen, her notepad clutched to her chest, her eyes darting toward the exit. Poirot's gray cells hummed. The killer was among them, hidden behind a facade of grief or innocence. Inspector Japp arrived within the hour, his heavy boots thudding against the polished floor, a stark contrast to the salon's refinement. His broad face was flushed, his mustache less distinguished than Poirot's. "Good Lord, Poirot, what's this mess?" he exclaimed, surveying the scene. "Poison, you say? In a place like this?" He gestured at the opulent surroundings as if wealth could shield against malice. Poirot's lips curved slightly. "Mon ami, it is precisely in such places that the heart's darkest desires flourish. The poison was swift, precise, a work of intent. We must discover who had the means, the opportunity, and most importantly, the motive." Poirot began his methodical inspection. The shattered glass drew his attention first. Its fragments glittered under the chandelier's light, the burgundy stain already drying. He noted a smudge of lipstick on the rim, not Celeste's deep crimson but a softer pink. A clue, perhaps, or a careless mistake. He signaled to Jap, who bagged the glass for analysis. Nearby, a waiter hovered, his young face pale. "Monsieur," Poirot said gently, "you served Madame Dubois her wine, oui?" The boy nodded, stammering, "Yes, sir." From the decanter, like always, she asked for her favorite burgundy. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The decanter, then, was a point of interest. He turned to Beatrice Langston, who stood apart, her composure fraying. "Mademoiselle Langston, what did Madame Dubois say before her fall?" His voice was soft, encouraging trust. Beatrice's fingers tightened around her notepad, her knuckles white. She mentioned a letter, monsieur, something troubling. She said it came this morning, but I didn't see it." Her voice trembled, and Poirot noted the flicker of fear in her eyes. A letter? No such document was found on Celeste's body or in her private office, which Poirot had discreetly searched while Jap questioned the guests. The absence of this letter was as telling as its contents might have been. Poirot's attention shifted to the other suspects. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, still clutching his cigar, was now deep in conversation with a fellow guest, his laughter forced. Poirot had learned through a discreet inquiry to a waiter that Reginald owed Celeste a substantial sum, debts from failed investments in a colonial venture. Had financial desperation driven him to murder? Evelyn Marlowe, meanwhile, drew eyes with her theatrical poise, but Poirot recalled a rumor. Celeste had publicly mocked her at a recent gala, calling her talent mediocre. Humiliation was a potent motive, and Evelyn's presence near the wine decanter earlier that evening had not gone unnoticed. Dr. Hammond, with his medical expertise, had access to poisons, and his unspoken love for Celeste was evident in his lingering gaze. Yet his grief seemed genuine, or was it a performance to rival Evelyn's? A new complication arose as a guest, a flustered dowager, reported a stolen necklace, a sapphire pendant matching Celeste's gown. The theft, discovered just before the scream, muddied the waters. Was it a motive for murder or a distraction? Poirot's mind raced. The necklace, the lipstick, the missing letter, all threads in a tapestry of deceit. He approached the decanter, still on a silver tray, and examined it under the guise of adjusting his cufflinks. No almond scent, but a faint residue on the rim suggested tampering. He would need the laboratory's confirmation, but his instincts whispered of deliberate intent. The salon's grandeur seemed to mock the tragedy. Its velvet drapes absorbed the whispers of the guests, who now clustered in nervous groups, their eyes darting to Poirot. He felt the weight of their scrutiny, but it only sharpened his focus. The killer had acted with confidence, assuming the chaos of the salon would conceal their crime. But Hercule Poirot was not so easily deceived. He moved to the library, a quieter annex where Celeste had often retreated. The room was lined with leather-bound volumes, their spines gleaming in the lamplight. A locked drawer in Celeste's desk caught his eye. With Jap's permission, he picked the lock, a skill he rarely admitted to possessing, and found a ledger detailing Reginald's debts. The figures were staggering, but a notation in Celeste's elegant script read, "To be settled by month's end, or ruin." A threat, perhaps, that had pushed Reginald too far. Poirot returned to the main salon, where the guests were growing restless. Evelyn Marlowe approached, her voice honeyed. "Monsieur Poirot, this is dreadful. Poor Celeste. She was so vibrant." Her eyes shimmered with tears, but Poirot noted their careful timing. "Mademoiselle Marlowe, you were near the decanter, no? Before Madame Dubois took her fatal sip?" Evelyn's smile faltered. I was adjusting my shawl. It's so drafty here." Her excuse was plausible, but her fingers toyed nervously with her pearls. Dr. Hammond, meanwhile, had retreated to a corner, his medical bag at his feet. Poirot approached, his tone conversational. "Doctor, you treated Madame Dubois, oui? For what ailments?" Hammond's eyes flickered. "Nerves, mostly. She was under strain. Business matters, I believe." His voice was steady, but his hands betrayed him, clenching briefly. Poirot made a mental note to inspect that bag later. Beatrice Langston remained the enigma. Her quiet efficiency as Celeste's secretary suggested loyalty, but her fear hinted at secrets. Poirot recalled her mention of the letter. "Mademoiselle, this letter... Did Madame Dubois say who sent it?" Beatrice shook her head, her voice barely audible. "No, monsieur. She only said it was personal." Personal. The word lingered, a clue to motive, betrayal perhaps, or a secret too dangerous to keep. The night deepened, the salon's chandeliers casting long shadows. Poirot stood by the crime scene, his mind a whirl of connections. The poison, swift and rare, required knowledge. The lipstick suggested a woman or a clever man. The letter's absence pointed to destruction by the killer. The necklace theft, the forged IOU, the whispered arguments, all were pieces of a puzzle only Poirot's gray cells could assemble. As he bent to examine the shattered glass once more, a glint caught his eye. A tiny bead, pink and glossy, nestled among the fragments. Not a jewel, but a trace of lipstick, distinct from Celeste's shade. He slipped it into a handkerchief, his heart quickening. The salon's elegance hid a murderer's audacity, but Hercule Poirot was closing in. Chapter 2. The Aristocrat's Burden. Poirot's attention turned to Lord Reginald Ashbourne, whose florid cheeks and booming laugh had marked him as the evening's jovial centerpiece, until Celeste's collapse. Now Reginald paced the library's Persian rug, his cigar trembling in his hand, its ash scattering like gray snow. His tailored evening suit, though impeccable, could not conceal the strain in his eyes. Poirot had learned, through discreet inquiries to a loquacious waiter, that Reginald was drowning in debt, his ancestral estate mortgaged to the hilt. Celeste, it was whispered, held his IOUs, her wealth a lifeline he could ill afford to lose. Had desperation driven him to poison? Poirot's eyes gleamed like polished agate. "Monsieur Ashbourne," he began, his voice velvet over steel. "You argued with Madame Dubois last week, no? A matter of business?" Reginald's laugh was a hollow bark. "Nonsense, Poirot. A trifling disagreement, nothing more." His eyes darted to a locked drawer in Celeste's desk, a gesture Poirot noted with interest. "Trifling, you say?" Poirot tilted his head, his tone deceptively mild. "Yet, I hear Madame Dubois was not so forgiving of debts unpaid." Reginald's cigar paused mid-air, his cheeks flushing darker. "Business is business, man. She was a shrewd woman, Celeste. We had an understanding." His bluster rang false, and Poirot's mustache twitched again. An understanding, perhaps, that had ended in murder? The library's heavy silence was broken by the arrival of Inspector Japp, his broad face etched with exasperation. "Poirot, this place is a circus," he muttered, mopping his brow. "Half these toffs are hiding something, and the other half are too drunk to talk straight." He gestured toward the main salon, where guests milled nervously, their whispers sharp with speculation. "Found anything yet?" Poirot's lips curved slightly. "Mon ami, the truth lies in the details. The lipstick on the glass, for instance, not Madame Dubois' shade, and the letter Mademoiselle Langston mentioned, which has vanished. These are not accidents," Japp grunted. "Lipstick letters? Give me a good old-fashioned motive, Poirot. Like money, Ashbourne's up to his neck in debt, isn't he?" Poirot nodded, his gaze returning to Reginald, who had retreated to a leather armchair, feigning nonchalance. The detective's mind churned. Money was a potent motive, but poison required precision, not just desperation. He approached the locked drawer, producing a small tool from his pocket. A lockpick he used with the finesse of a surgeon. Jap raised an eyebrow but said nothing as the drawer clicked open. Inside was a ledger, its pages filled with Celeste's elegant script. Poirot's finger traced the entries, sums lent to Reginald totaling thousands with a note, payment due by month's end or consequences. Consequences. The word hung in the air like a guillotine. Had Reginald silenced his creditor to escape ruin? Poirot's investigation widened. He returned to the main salon where the guests' faces were a gallery of unease. Evelyn Marlowe, the actress, drew attention like a magnet, her auburn curls catching the chandelier's light. Her smile was a practiced mask, but Poirot recalled the rumor of her public humiliation by Celeste, a scathing critique at a Mayfair gala that had left Evelyn's career teetering. She stood near a marble statue, her fingers toying with her pearls, her eyes darting toward the crime scene. Poirot approached, his demeanor courteous. Mademoiselle Marlowe, you were near the decanter before Madame Dubois' fatal sip, oui? Evelyn's laugh was brittle. Oh, Monsieur Poirot, I was merely adjusting my shawl. These rooms are so drafty. Her excuse was smooth, but her fingers trembled, betraying her composure. A new clue emerged from a nervous waiter who approached Poirot with a whisper. Sir, I saw Lord Ashbourne near the wine decanter earlier. He was fidgeting like he didn't want to be seen. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Fidgeting, you say? And where was this? The waiter pointed to a shadowed alcove near the salon's bar where the decanter had stood. Poirot examined the spot, noting a faint spill of burgundy on the polished wood. No almond scent, but a residue suggested tampering. He signaled Jap to collect a sample, his mind racing. Reginald's proximity to the decanter was damning, but was it too obvious? The stolen necklace reported by the dowager resurfaced in Poirot's thoughts. A sapphire pendant matching Celeste's gown had vanished just before the scream. Was it a motive for murder or a distraction? Poirot questioned the dowager, whose indignation was palpable. It was on my neck one moment, gone the next, she huffed. Someone in this den of vipers took it. Her accusation pointed to no one in particular, but Poirot noted Evelyn's proximity to her earlier. A pickpocket's skill perhaps honed on the stage. Yet the necklace felt peripheral, a red herring to divert attention from the poison. Beatrice Langston, Celeste's secretary, hovered at the edge of the crowd, her notepad clutched like a talisman. Her pale face and quiet demeanor intrigued Poirot. She had mentioned a troubling letter, yet no trace of it remained. Mademoiselle Langston, he said softly, drawing her aside. This letter Madame Dubois received. What did she say of its contents? Beatrice's eyes flickered with fear. She said it was personal, monsieur, something about a betrayal. She was frightened. Her voice was barely audible, and Poirot sensed she was holding back. Betrayal suggested intimacy, a secret shared with the killer. Was Beatrice protecting someone or herself? Dr. Victor Hammond, the physician, remained a figure of quiet intensity. His medical bag, left in the anteroom, was a point of interest. Poirot had noted a missing vial during his earlier inspection, a detail Hammond had not explained. Doctor, Poirot said, approaching him, you treated Madame Dubois for nerves, oui? Did she speak of enemies? Hammond's scholarly face tightened. She was under strain, Monsieur Poirot. Business pressures, nothing specific. His hands, however, clenched briefly, and Poirot marked it. A man in love, perhaps, hiding a wound deeper than grief. The salon's atmosphere grew heavier, the guests' whispers turning to murmurs of impatience. Poirot felt their eyes, some curious, others wary. He returned to the crime scene where the shattered glass lay cordoned off by Jap's men. The pink lipstick smudge haunted him. It was not Celeste's crimson, nor Evelyn's coral, nor Beatrice's understated beige. A fourth woman or a man's cunning. He knelt, his gloved fingers tracing the rug's weave. A tiny bead, glossy and pink, caught his eye, the same shade as the lipstick. He pocketed it, his heart quickening. The killer had been careless or perhaps too confident. Poirot's gray cells worked tirelessly, sorting the threads. Reginald's debts were a clear motive, but his bluster suggested panic, not guile. Evelyn's humiliation was potent, but her theatrical flair could mask either innocence or deceit. Hammond's access to poisons was undeniable, yet his grief seemed genuine. Beatrice's fear hinted at a hidden past, perhaps tied to the missing letter. The necklace, the spilled wine, the forged IOU, all were distractions, yet each held a grain of truth. He approached Reginald again, who was now nursing a brandy, his eyes bloodshot. "Monsieur Ashbourne, this ledger," Poirot said, tapping the book. "It shows debts you could not pay. Did Madame Dubois threaten to expose you?" Reginald's cigar fell, scattering ash. "Expose me? Preposterous! She was reasonable, I tell you." His voice cracked and Poirot's gaze sharpened. Reasonable or ruthless? The locked drawer held another clue, a draft of an IOU written in a hand not Celeste's. A forgery, perhaps, to shift blame. The salon's chandeliers flickered, casting long shadows. Poirot stood, his small frame radiating authority. The killer was among them, their confidence bolstered by the chaos of the evening. But Hercule Poirot was not deceived. The lipstick, the letter, the ledger, all pointed to a mind both calculating and desperate. As he turned to leave the library, a glint in the drawer caught his eye, a torn scrap of paper, its ink fresh. He unfolded it, his pulse quickening. The words in Celeste's hand read, "Your debt is repaid in blood." Chapter 3. The Doctor's Devotion. Poirot's attention turned to Dr. Victor Hammond, the physician whose scholarly demeanor and quiet intensity had marked him from the moment Celeste collapsed. Hammond stood near his medical bag, which rested ominously on a lacquered table in the anteroom. His hands, usually steady from years of practice, trembled slightly as he adjusted his spectacles. Poirot had noted a missing vial during an earlier discreet inspection of the bag, a detail that raised questions about Hammond's role in the poisoning. The doctor's devotion to Celeste was evident in his lingering gaze, his futile attempt to revive her, but was it love, or a mask for something darker? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind's restless machinery. "Dr. Hammond," he began, his voice soft yet piercing, "you treated Madame Dubois for nerves, oui? But perhaps you also had access to other substances?" Hammond's face paled, his eyes flickering behind his spectacles. "Monsieur Poirot, I treated Celeste for anxiety, nothing more. Laudanum, mild sedatives, nothing lethal." His voice was earnest, but a bead of sweat glistened on his brow. Poirot tilted his head, his tone deceptively gentle. "And yet, a vial is missing from your bag, doctor. A curious oversight for a man of precision." Hammond's hands clenched, then relaxed as if willing calm. I must have misplaced it. The salon is chaotic tonight." His excuse was plausible, but Poirot's gray cells hummed. A misplaced vial in a murder by poison? Unlikely. The anteroom, with its velvet curtains and polished wood, was a quieter haven than the main salon, where Inspector Japp was herding guests like a beleaguered shepherd. Japp's heavy footsteps echoed as he approached, his broad face etched with frustration. "Poirot, this lot's tighter lipped than a bank vault," he grumbled, mopping his brow. Ashbourne's blustering about his debts, Marlowe's playing the grieving ingenue, and that secretary, Langston, looks ready to bolt. Got anything solid? Poirot's lips curved slightly. Mon ami, the solid lies in the subtle. The missing vial, the vanished letter, the lipstick, these are not accidents. Dr. Hammond, for instance, had opportunity and perhaps motive. Japp's eyes narrowed. Love, you mean? I've seen men kill for less. Poirot's gaze returned to Hammond, who had retreated to a corner, his medical bag now clutched like a shield. The detective recalled a detail from the Salon's staff. Hammond had been seen lingering near Celeste before her fatal sip, his expression one of quiet longing. Love, unrequited, could twist into vengeance, and Hammond's expertise gave him the means. Poirot approached, his steps deliberate. Doctor, you were close to Madame Dubois, no? Closer, perhaps, than a physician should be? Hammond's cheeks flushed, but his voice was steady. She was my patient, Monsieur Poirot, and a friend, nothing improper. The pause before friend was telling, and Poirot filed it away. To deepen his inquiry, Poirot requested Hammond's diary, which the doctor reluctantly produced from his bag. The pages, filled with clinical notes, held a surprise. Tucked between them were ardent poems penned in Hammond's precise hand, dedicated to C.D., Celeste Dubois. Lines spoke of a heart bound by sapphire chains and love unspoken yet eternal. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Poetry, doctor? A curious hobby for a man of science. Hammond's face reddened. A private indulgence, nothing more. But the poem suggested obsession, a motive as potent as Reginald's debts or Evelyn's humiliation. Poirot's investigation widened. He returned to the main salon where the guests' faces were a gallery of unease. Evelyn Marlowe, the actress, stood near a marble fireplace, her auburn curls catching the firelight. Her tears, shed for Celeste, seemed rehearsed, and Poirot recalled her public humiliation, a scathing review by Celeste that had nearly ended her career. Mademoiselle Marlowe, he said, approaching. You were near the decanter adjusting your shawl. A convenient moment, perhaps, to tamper? Evelyn's laugh was a delicate chime, but her eyes were wary. Tamper? Monsieur Poirot, I'm an actress, not a chemist. Her deflection was swift, but Poirot noted her fingers twisting her pearls, a sign of nerves. Beatrice Langston, Celeste's secretary, remained a shadow at the room's edge, her notepad clutched tightly. Poirot approached her, his voice gentle. Mademoiselle Langston, the letter Madame Dubois mentioned, it spoke of betrayal, oui? Did she name the sender? Beatrice's pale face tightened, her eyes darting toward the exit. No, monsieur, she only said it was personal. She was frightened. Her voice trembled, and Poirot sensed a secret buried deep. He pressed further. And you, mademoiselle, saw nothing unusual? No one near the decanter? Beatrice shook her head, but her fingers betrayed her, crumpling a corner of her notepad. A new clue emerged from a waiter who approached Poirot with a nervous whisper. Sir, I saw Dr. Hammond in the wine cellar earlier before the incident. He was checking the bottles, he said, for quality. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The cellar, you say? Show me. The waiter led him to a narrow stair, descending to a cool, stone-walled room lined with racks of burgundy and claret. The decanter's bottle, now empty, sat on a shelf. Poirot examined it, noting no almond scent, but a faint residue on the neck suggested tampering. He found a scrap of paper nearby, a label torn from a vial marked with the name of a rare poison, potassium cyanide. His pulse quickened. Had Hammond's expertise been his downfall, or was this another distraction? The stolen necklace reported by the dowager resurfaced in Poirot's thoughts. Its disappearance seemed peripheral, yet it nagged at him. He questioned the dowager again, who was now fanning herself indignantly. My sapphire pendant, gone, Monsieur Poirot, stolen in this den of thieves. Her accusation pointed to Evelyn, who had been nearby, but Poirot suspected a red herring. The necklace, like the forged IOU in Reginald's drawer, felt planted to mislead. He returned to the anteroom where Hammond's bag remained. A closer inspection revealed a faint stain on the leather. A trace of the same poison? Poirot signaled Japp to secure it for analysis. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, meanwhile, was deep in conversation with a fellow guest, his cigar ash scattering anew. Poirot recalled the ledger's damning note. Consequences. Had Reginald acted to avoid ruin? Yet the forged IOU found in Celeste's drawer suggested a deeper game. Poirot approached him, his tone conversational. Monsieur Ashbourne, your debts to Madame Dubois were considerable, non? Did she threaten to expose you? Reginald's laugh was forced. Expose me? Preposterous. We had an agreement. His eyes, however, betrayed panic, and Poirot noted it. The salon's atmosphere grew oppressive, the chandelier's light dimming as if in mourning. Poirot stood by the crime scene, the shattered glass a silent witness. The pink lipstick smudge haunted him, its shade matching no guests yet found. He knelt, his gloved fingers tracing the rug. A tiny bead, glossy and pink, lay among the fragments, a match to the smudge. He pocketed it, his mind racing. The killer had been careless or perhaps too confident, assuming the salon's chaos would conceal their crime. Poirot's gray cells sorted the threads. Hammond's missing vial and poem suggested a personal motive, but his grief seemed genuine. Reginald's debts were clear, but the forged IOU pointed to manipulation. Evelyn's theatrical flair could conceal cunning, yet her handkerchief, found near the scene, was clean of poison, another red herring. Beatrice's fear hinted at a hidden past, perhaps tied to the vanished letter. The vial's label, the lipstick, the ledger, all were pieces of a puzzle only Poirot could solve. As he moved toward the cellar stair, a guest's whisper reached him. Celeste argued with someone last night about a debt repaid in blood. The words echoed the torn IOU's note. Poirot's heart quickened. The killer was close, their confidence growing. But Hercule Poirot was closer still. Chapter 4. The Secretary's Shadow. Poirot's attention now turned to Beatrice Langston, Celeste's secretary, whose quiet demeanor and pale, unreadable face had intrigued him from the start. Beatrice moved through the salon like a shadow, her notepad a constant companion, her eyes darting nervously as if expecting pursuit. She had mentioned a troubling letter received by Celeste, one that spoke of betrayal, yet no trace of it had been found. Was Beatrice a loyal servant caught in the storm, or a player in a darker game? Poirot's instincts whispered of secrets buried beneath her reserved exterior, and he resolved to uncover them. The office, with its heavy curtains and ticking grandfather clock, was a stark contrast to the salon's opulence. Poirot stood by Celeste's desk, where a photograph caught his eye. A younger Beatrice standing beside a man with sharp features, his arm around her shoulders. The man's face was familiar, a resemblance to a known forger Poirot had encountered in a past case. Mademoiselle Langston, he said, his voice soft as he summoned her from the doorway. This photograph, who is this man? Beatrice entered, her steps hesitant, her fingers tightening around her notepad. A cousin, monsieur, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Long gone, I'm afraid. Her eyes avoided the photograph, and Poirot noted the tremor in her hands. A cousin or a connection to a criminal past? Poirot pressed gently, his tone encouraging trust. Mademoiselle, you spoke of a letter Madame Dubois received. You said she was frightened. Did she share its contents with you? Beatrice's lips parted, then closed as if wrestling with a confession. She said it was personal, monsieur, something about a betrayal, someone close. She burned it, I think, in the fireplace. Her eyes flicked toward the office's small hearth, now cold. Poirot's gaze followed, his mind racing. A burned letter suggested a secret too dangerous to keep. But Beatrice's hesitation hinted at more. Fear, perhaps, or guilt. He moved to the fireplace, his gloved fingers sifting through the ashes. A few charred fragments remained, their edges curling like blackened petals. He extracted a scrap, its ink faded but legible. Your betrayal will cost you. The words in Celeste's elegant script were a chilling echo of the torn IOU found in Lord Reginald Ashbourne's drawer. Poirot's pulse quickened. The letter, or its remnants, was a key, but to whose motive? He turned to Beatrice, his eyes piercing. Mademoiselle, you saw Madame Dubois burn this? Or did you perhaps destroy it yourself? Beatrice's face drained of color, her notepad slipping slightly. No, monsieur, I would never. Her protest was fervent, but Poirot sensed a crack in her composure. The investigation widened. Poirot had uncovered Celeste's will in the desk, a document naming Beatrice as a minor beneficiary, a modest sum far less than her years of service might warrant. Had she expected more? Resentment could fester in such disparities, and Beatrice's quiet efficiency might conceal a deeper grudge. He recalled a maid's whisper. Beatrice had been seen arguing with Celeste days before, her voice raised in rare defiance. Mademoiselle, Poirot said, his tone conversational, did Madame Dubois ever speak harshly to you? A woman of her temperament could be demanding. Beatrice's eyes flickered, her voice low. She was strict, monsieur, sometimes cruel. She said I'd never rise above my station. The words carried a bitter edge, and Poirot filed it away. A motive, perhaps, rooted in wounded pride. Inspector Japp's heavy footsteps announced his arrival, his broad face etched with impatience. Poirot, this place is a maze of lies, he grumbled, adjusting his hat. Ashbourne's sweating like a cornered fox. Marlowe's tears are straight from the stage. And Hammond's poems, good Lord, the man's besotted. Got anything on the secretary? Poirot's lips curved slightly. Mon ami, Mademoiselle Langston is a shadow, but shadows hide much. The letter she mentioned, now burned, speaks of betrayal. And this photograph, he gestured to the image, noting Japp's raised eyebrow. A forger, you say? That's a tidy coincidence. Japp's tone was skeptical, but Poirot's mind was already weaving connections. Poirot returned to the main salon, where the guests' unease had thickened into a palpable tension. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, his cigar now a stub, was deep in conversation, his laughter forced. His debts to Celeste, detailed in the ledger, were a clear motive, but the forged IOU suggested manipulation. Perhaps Beatrice's doing. Evelyn Marlowe, the actress, stood by a grand piano, her auburn curls catching the chandelier's light. Her handkerchief, found near the crime scene, had been analyzed and bore no poison. A red herring. But whose? Poirot approached, his demeanor courteous. Mademoiselle Marlowe, your handkerchief was found near the glass, a curious place for such a delicate item. Evelyn's smile was radiant, but her eyes were wary. Oh, Monsieur Poirot, I'm so clumsy it must have slipped from my hand. Her excuse was smooth, but Poirot noted her fingers twisting her pearls, a telltale sign of nerves. Dr. Victor Hammond lingered near the anteroom, his medical bag now under Japp's scrutiny. The missing vial and ardent poems pointed to a man consumed by love. But was it enough for murder? Poirot recalled the vial's label found in the cellar marked with cyanide's name. Hammond's expertise made him a suspect, yet his grief seemed genuine. Doctor, Poirot said, approaching, you were in the cellar checking bottles, oui? Did you notice anything unusual? Hammond's spectacles glinted as he shook his head. Just routine, Monsieur Poirot. Celeste liked her wine perfect. His voice was steady, but his hands betrayed him, clenching briefly. The stolen sapphire necklace reported by the Dowager resurfaced as a guest announced its recovery, found in a coat pocket belonging to a minor lord. Poirot examined it, its sapphires glinting like Celeste's gown. The theft was unrelated to the poison, he concluded, another distraction to muddy the waters. His focus returned to the letter's fragments. Your betrayal will cost you. The words suggested a personal wound, a secret Celeste had uncovered. Beatrice's cousin, the forger, loomed in his thoughts. Had Celeste threatened to expose him, and had Beatrice acted to protect him? Poirot requested access to Beatrice's quarters, a small room above the salon. Jap, grumbling but compliant, accompanied him. The room was Spartan, its only adornment a locked diary. With Beatrice's reluctant permission, Poirot opened it, revealing entries in her neat hand. One passage stood out. She mocks me daily. You'll never be more than a servant, she says. I hate her. The raw emotion startled Poirot, but a later entry was more telling. She knows about R, threatens to tell all. R Reginald or another? Poirot's gray cells hummed. Beatrice's loyalty to Celeste had fractured, but was it enough for murder? The salon's chandeliers dimmed, casting long shadows. Poirot stood in the office, the charred letter fragment in his hand. The guests' whispers grew louder, their eyes tracking his every move. He felt the killer's confidence, their belief that the salon's chaos would conceal their crime. But Hercule Poirot was not so easily deceived. He returned to the fireplace, sifting the ashes once more. A second fragment emerged, its ink faint. You will pay for your betrayal. The words were a dagger pointing to a motive rooted in trust broken. Chapter 5. The Actress's Mask. Tonight his focus turned to Evelyn Marlowe, the aspiring actress whose auburn curls and radiant smile captivated the salon's guests like a spotlight on a darkened stage. Her presence was magnetic, yet Poirot sensed a performance beneath her charm, a mask crafted for survival in a world that had scorned her. Celeste's public humiliation of Evelyn, a scathing dismissal of her talent at a Mayfair gala, had left her career teetering on the edge. Was her grief for Celeste genuine, or a role played to perfection? Poirot's eyes, sharp as cut agate, followed her as she glided through the crowd, her coral lips curved in a smile that never reached her eyes. A prop caught his attention, a vial-shaped pendant dangling from her wrist, glinting under the chandelier's light. Could it conceal poison, or was it another theatrical flourish? Poirot approached, his demeanor courteous but probing. Mademoiselle Marlowe, he began, his voice soft yet incisive. Your handkerchief was found near the fatal glass. A curious coincidence, no? Evelyn's laugh was a delicate chime, but her fingers tightened around her pearls. Oh, Monsieur Poirot, I'm dreadfully clumsy. It must have slipped from my hand during the chaos. Her eyes shimmered with practiced tears, but Poirot noted their careful timing. And your pendant, he continued, gesturing to the vial-shaped charm. It is most evocative, a prop from the stage, perhaps. Evelyn's smile faltered. A trinket, nothing more, a gift from an admirer. Her deflection was swift, but Poirot's gray cells hummed. A trinket or a tool of murder? The salon's opulence seemed to mock the tragedy, its polished mahogany and plush rugs a stark contrast to the darkness unfolding. Inspector Japp's heavy footsteps announced his arrival, his broad face flushed with exasperation. Poirot, this lot's slipperier than eels, he muttered, adjusting his hat. Ashbourne's debts are a motive, Hammond's poems scream obsession, and Langston's hiding something, those ashes in her fireplace. But Marlowe? She's all tears and no substance. Poirot's lips curved slightly. Mon ami, substance lies beneath the surface. Mademoiselle Marlowe's performance is flawless, yet every actress has her script. We must find hers. Poirot's investigation deepened. He recalled the waiter's testimony. Evelyn had been near the wine decanter, adjusting her shawl moments before Celeste's fatal sip. The shawl, a diaphanous silk, had fluttered dramatically, perhaps to conceal her actions. He approached the decanter, still on its silver tray, and examined it under the guise of adjusting his cufflinks. No almond scent, but a faint residue on the rim suggested tampering, a clue now under Japp's laboratory scrutiny. The pink lipstick smudge on the shattered glass haunted him. It matched neither Celeste's crimson nor Evelyn's coral, nor Beatrice's beige. A fourth player or a deliberate misdirection? Poirot requested Evelyn's handbag, left carelessly on a velvet settee. With her reluctant permission, he opened it, revealing a script for a play titled The Poisoned Chalice. His pulse quickened as he scanned the pages. A scene described a heroine slipping poison into a rival's wine, her motive revenge for public humiliation. The parallels were uncanny, too precise to be coincidence. "Mademoiselle," he said, holding up the script, "this is most intriguing. Your play mirrors Madame Dubois' fate, non?" Evelyn's face paled, but her voice was steady. "A coincidence, Monsieur Poirot. Art imitates life, does it not?" Her smile was defiant, but her fingers twisted her pearls until one snapped, rolling across the floor. The salon's guests, now restless, watched Poirot with a mix of awe and unease. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, his cigar reduced to ash, muttered about his debts, his florid cheeks betraying panic. The forged IOU found in Celeste's drawer pointed to manipulation, perhaps Beatrice's, given the ink matched her pen. Dr. Victor Hammond lingered in the anteroom, his medical bag now cleared of poison but not suspicion. His poems, ardent and obsessive, suggested a love that could turn lethal. Beatrice Langston, the secretary, hovered at the room's edge, her notepad a shield. Her diary's bitter entries and the vial in her desk cast a shadow. But was she the killer, or a scapegoat? Poirot returned to the crime scene, where the shattered glass lay cordoned off. The pink lipstick bead tucked in his handkerchief was a silent accusation. He knelt, his gloved fingers tracing the rug's weave. A faint glitter caught his eye, a sequin from Evelyn's shawl lodged among the fragments. It was too convenient, another red herring like her handkerchief. Poirot's mind raced. The killer was cunning, planting clues to mislead. The recovered sapphire necklace found in a guest's coat had been dismissed as unrelated, but its timing nagged at him. Was it a distraction or a clue to a larger scheme? He questioned a waiter who recalled Evelyn's movements. "She was near the decanter, sir, fussing with her shawl. Looked like she was hiding something." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Hiding, you say? Or ensuring she was seen?" The waiter shrugged, uncertain. Poirot's gray cells sorted the threads. Evelyn's humiliation was a motive, her proximity to the decanter an opportunity, but her script suggested premeditation. Yet the lipstick's mismatch puzzled him. He approached Beatrice again, seeking clarity on the burned letter. "Mademoiselle Langston, this letter of betrayal, did Madame Dubois mention a name?" Beatrice's eyes darted away. "No, monsieur. Only that it was someone she trusted." Her voice trembled, and Poirot sensed a secret she dared not share. The salon's atmosphere grew oppressive, the chandelier's light flickering as if in mourning. Poirot stood by the fireplace, its embers dying, and recalled the charred fragments. "Your betrayal will cost you." The words pointed to a personal wound, a trust shattered. Evelyn's public humiliation fit, but so did Beatrice's resentment, Hammond's obsession, and Reginald's desperation. Poirot requested a guest list, cross-referencing it with Celeste's ledger. A name emerged, a minor actress once close to Evelyn who had left the salon early. Her lipstick shade was unknown, a potential match for the pink smudge. Had Evelyn conspired with an ally, or was this another misdirection? Poirot's thoughts returned to the script. He read further, finding a stage direction. The heroine conceals the vial in her pendant. His gaze snapped to Evelyn's wrist where the vial-shaped charm dangled innocently. He approached, his tone conversational. "Mademoiselle, your pendant. May I examine it?" Evelyn's smile froze, but she unclasped it, her fingers trembling. The pendant was empty, its glass pristine. "A trinket, as I said," she insisted. Poirot nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The script was a blueprint, but whose hand had followed it? The guests' whispers grew louder, their eyes tracking Poirot's every move. Jap, pacing nearby, muttered, "We're drowning in clues, Poirot. Lipstick, scripts, vials, what's next?" Poirot's lips curved. "The truth, mon ami, it hides in plain sight." He felt the killer's confidence, their belief that the salon's chaos would shield them. But Hercule Poirot was closing in. Chapter 6. The Web Tightens. He gathered the suspects, Lord Reginald Ashbourne, Evelyn Marlowe, Dr. Victor Hammond, and Beatrice Langston, in the salon's grand hall, their faces taut under the chandelier's flickering light. The guests, now relegated to the periphery, watched with bated breath, their whispers hushed. Poirot's voice, soft yet commanding, cut through the tension like a blade. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, pacing with deliberate grace. "The death of Madame Dubois was no accident. The poison, cyanide, swift and precise, required knowledge, opportunity, and motive. The truth lies not in one clue, but in their harmony." His eyes, sharp as polished agate, scanned the suspects, noting each reaction. Reginald's florid cheeks flushed with unease, Evelyn's practiced smile frozen, Hammond's spectacles glinting with nervous intensity. Beatrice's notepad clutched like a lifeline. Poirot held up the vial's label, found in the cellar, its ink stark. Potassium cyanide. "This," he said, his voice pausing for effect, "was found where the burgundy was stored, a rare poison accessible only to one with expertise." Hammond flinched, his hands clenching, but he said nothing. Poirot turned to Reginald, producing the forged IOU from Celeste's drawer. "Monsieur Ashbourne, your debts to Madame Dubois were considerable, non? Yet this document, it is not her hand. A forgery, perhaps, to shift blame." Reginald's cigar trembled, ash scattering like gray snow. "Preposterous," he blustered. "I've no head for such tricks." His voice cracked, betraying panic. Evelyn Marlowe, standing by a marble statue, adjusted her shawl, her auburn curls catching the light. Poirot's gaze lingered on her. "Mademoiselle Marlowe, your script, The Poisoned Chalice, describes a murder eerily like this one. And this note," he said, unfolding the paper from her bag, "says, 'Meet me at midnight. Ensure the glass is hers.' A rehearsal or a plan?" Evelyn's smile wavered, her fingers twisting her pearls. "A coincidence, Monsieur Poirot. I'm an actress, not a murderer." Her voice was honeyed, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. Beatrice Langston stood apart, her pale face a mask of restraint. Poirot approached, his tone gentle. "Mademoiselle Langston, you spoke of a letter burned by Madame Dubois, yet fragments remain speaking of betrayal. And in your desk a vial, empty but scented with almonds." Beatrice's notepad slipped, her hands trembling. I found it, monsieur. I didn't use it." Her voice was a whisper, but Poirot sensed a truth half-spoken. Inspector Japp, pacing nearby, muttered, Good Lord, Poirot, it's a tangle. Vials, scripts, forgeries. Everyone's got a motive. Poirot's lips curved slightly. Mon ami, the tangle is the killer's design, but Hercule Poirot sees the pattern. He turned to the crime scene where the shattered glass lay cordoned off. The pink lipstick smudge, unmatched to any suspect, haunted him. A fourth player, or a deliberate misdirection? He knelt, his gloved fingers tracing the rug, and found another sequin from Evelyn's shawl, a clue too convenient, like her handkerchief, now cleared of poison. Poirot's investigation deepened. A waiter, emboldened by the tension, approached with a new revelation. "Sir, I overheard Madame Dubois last night arguing in the library. She said, 'Your debt is repaid in blood.'" Sounded personal, sir. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The phrase echoed the burned letter fragments and the forged IOU. Was it Reginald's financial ruin, Hammond's unrequited love, Evelyn's humiliation, or Beatrice's hidden grudge? He requested Celeste's correspondence, sifting through invitations and bills in her office. A letter, unburned but tucked in a hidden drawer, caught his eye. It was unsigned, its tone menacing. "Your secrets will ruin us all." The ink matched Beatrice's pen, but the handwriting was unfamiliar. Another forgery, or a clue to the killer's identity? The salon's atmosphere grew oppressive, the chandelier's light flickering as if in protest. Poirot returned to the suspects, his mind sorting the threads. Reginald's debts were clear, but his bluster suggested panic, not cunning. Evelyn's script and note pointed to premeditation, yet her pendant was empty, a theatrical prop. Hammond's missing vial and poem suggested obsession, but his grief rang true. Beatrice's diary revealed resentment, and the vial in her desk was damning, yet her fear hinted at manipulation. The pink lipstick smudge remained the enigma, its shade a ghost in the puzzle. Poirot questioned a maid who recalled seeing Evelyn near the decanter, her shawl fluttering as if to conceal her hands. "She was fussing, sir, like she didn't want to be noticed." Poirot's gray cells hummed. Was Evelyn's theatricality a cover for murder or a distraction? He approached Hammond, whose medical bag was now under laboratory scrutiny. "Doctor, your vial. Missing, yet its label found in the cellar. Did you misplace it or was it taken?" Hammond's spectacles glinted. "Taken, I swear. I'd never harm Celeste." His voice broke, and Poirot noted the sincerity, but love could twist into vengeance. Beatrice's shadow loomed larger. Poirot returned to her quarters, re-examining her diary. A new entry caught his eye. "C knows about R, she'll destroy. Him. R. Reginald or her cousin, the forger?" The photograph of Beatrice with the sharp-featured man nagged at him. He questioned her again, his tone gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle, this cousin, was he known to Madame Dubois?" Beatrice's face paled, her voice a whisper. She met him once. She didn't approve." Her evasion was telling, and Poirot sensed a connection to the letter's betrayal. The recovered sapphire necklace found in a guest's coat resurfaced in his thoughts. Its return had dismissed it as a red herring, but its timing, moments before Celeste's collapse, suggested a staged distraction. Poirot examined it, its sapphires glinting like Celeste's gown. Had it been planted to divert suspicion? He questioned the dowager, whose indignation was unabated. "Stolen, then returned. This salon is a den of thieves." Her accusation pointed to no one, but Poirot noted Evelyn's proximity at the time of the theft. The guests' whispers grew louder, their eyes tracking Poirot's every move. Japp, exasperated, muttered, "We're drowning in clues, Poirot. Lipstick, letters, scripts. What's the thread?" Poirot's lips curved. "The thread, mon ami, is motive. Betrayal, debt, love, shame, all weave the killer's web." He felt the killer's confidence, their belief that the salon's chaos would shield them. But Hercule Poirot was not deceived. He returned to the crime scene, the shattered glass a silent witness. The pink lipstick bead tucked in his handkerchief was a damning clue. He scanned the suspects. Reginald's panic, Evelyn's poise, Hammond's grief, Beatrice's fear. The note from Evelyn's script, "Meet me at midnight," suggested a conspiracy, but with whom? Poirot's gray cells worked tirelessly, sorting the fragments, the vial's label, the forged IOU, the burned letter, the sequin. The truth was close, hidden in plain sight. As he moved toward the library, a guest's cry halted him. A burned scrap overlooked in the salon's hearth fluttered to the floor. Poirot retrieved it, his pulse quickening. The ink, faint but legible, read, "Your secret will ruin us all." The words matched the unsigned letter, pointing to a scandal Celeste had uncovered. Chapter 7. The Hidden Truth. Poirot's investigation turned inward, probing the web of motives binding the suspects. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, drowning in debt, Evelyn Marlowe, stung by public humiliation, Dr. Victor Hammond, consumed by unrequited love, and Beatrice Langston, the secretive secretary whose diary revealed resentment. The burned letter fragments, with their talk of betrayal, suggested a personal wound. But whose? Poirot's mind returned to Beatrice, whose pale face and trembling hands betrayed a deeper story. The photograph of her with a man resembling a known forger, coupled with the vial in her desk, cast a shadow over her loyalty. Had Celeste's threat to expose her cousin driven Beatrice to murder, or was she a pawn in a larger scheme? Poirot moved to the Salon's private office, where Celeste's desk held secrets yet uncovered. The ticking grandfather clock marked the late hour, its rhythm a counterpoint to the guest's restless whispers beyond the door. He sifted through papers, finding a ledger detailing Beatrice's modest salary, a pittance for her years of service. A note in Celeste's elegant script read, "B must be reminded of her place." The cruelty stung, echoing Beatrice's diary entry. "She says I'll never be more than a servant." Poirot's gray cells hummed. Resentment, when nurtured, could bloom into vengeance, but was it enough for poison? Inspector Japp's heavy footsteps announced his arrival, his broad face flushed with frustration. "Poirot, this case is a blasted labyrinth," he grumbled, mopping his brow. "Ashbourne's debts, Hammond's poems, Marlowe's script, and now Langston's vial. Everyone's guilty of something." Poirot's lips curved slightly. "Mon ami, guilt is not always murder. The truth lies in the harmony of clues, not their cacophony." He gestured to the burned scrap. "This secret Celeste uncovered, it threatened ruin. We must find who stood to lose the most." Poirot summoned Beatrice to the office, his tone gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle Langston, you spoke of a letter Madame Dubois burned. Yet fragments remain and they speak of betrayal. Did she mention a name?" Beatrice's hands clutched her notepad, her eyes darting to the fireplace. "No, monsieur," she whispered. "Only that it was someone she trusted. She was afraid." Her voice trembled, and Poirot noted a flicker of guilt. He pressed further. "And this cousin in your photograph, Madame Dubois knew him, oui? A forger, perhaps?" Beatrice's face drained of color. He was family. She disapproved, but that's all." Her evasion was palpable, and Poirot sensed a connection to the letter's threat. To deepen his inquiry, Poirot questioned the salon's staff. A maid, nervous but forthcoming, revealed a startling detail. Celeste had dismissed Beatrice's cousin Robert a year ago for theft. "He was caught taking silver, sir. Madame was furious, threatened to have him arrested. Miss Langston begged her not to." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Had Celeste's threat to expose Robert's crimes resurfaced, pushing Beatrice to act? He returned to Beatrice's quarters, re-examining her diary. A new entry stood out. C knows about R, she'll ruin him. I can't let her. The R could be Robert, not Reginald, suggesting a motive rooted in family loyalty rather than personal gain. The salon's main hall remained a stage of tension, the guests' eyes tracking Poirot's every move. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, his cigar now a stub, paced near a marble statue, his florid cheeks betraying panic. The forged IOU, its ink matching Beatrice's pen, pointed to her involvement, but was it to frame Reginald or protect another? Poirot approached, his tone conversational. Monsieur Ashbourne, your debts were a burden, non? Did Madame Dubois threaten exposure? Reginald's laugh was forced. Exposure? Nonsense. We had an agreement. His eyes darted to the office where the ledger lay, and Poirot noted the fear beneath his bluster. Evelyn Marlowe, her auburn curls catching the chandelier's light, stood by the grand piano, her smile a practiced mask. The note from her script, "Meet me at midnight, ensure the glass is hers," suggested a conspiracy, but with whom? Poirot approached, holding up the script. Mademoiselle, your play describes a poisoning with uncanny precision. And this note, most curious. Who was to meet you? Evelyn's pearls snapped under her nervous fingers, a bead rolling across the floor. A stage note, Monsieur Poirot, nothing more. Her voice was defiant, but her eyes betrayed unease. Dr. Victor Hammond lingered in the anteroom, his medical bag now cleared of poison but not suspicion. His poems, ardent and obsessive, painted a man consumed by love, but his grief seemed genuine. Poirot questioned him, his tone probing. Doctor, your vial was missing, its label found in the cellar. Did Madame Dubois reject your affections? Hammond's spectacles glinted. Reject? No, she was kind. Distant, but kind. His voice broke, and Poirot wondered if love had turned to desperation. The recovered sapphire necklace found in a guest's coat resurfaced in Poirot's thoughts. Its return had dismissed it as a red herring, but its timing, moments before Celeste's collapse, suggested a staged distraction. He questioned the dowager, whose indignation was undimmed. Stolen, then returned. This salon is a nest of vipers. Her accusation pointed to Evelyn, but Poirot suspected a broader scheme. The pink lipstick smudge, unmatched to any suspect, remained a puzzle. A fourth player, or a deliberate misdirection? Poirot returned to the crime scene, the shattered glass a silent witness. The pink lipstick bead tucked in his handkerchief was a damning clue. He knelt, his gloved fingers tracing the rug, and found a faint trace of powder. Cosmetic, perhaps, from Evelyn's shawl. It was too convenient, like her handkerchief now cleared of poison. The note from her script nagged at him. Meet me at midnight. Had Evelyn conspired with an unseen ally? Or was she a pawn in another's game? He revisited the office, sifting through Celeste's papers. A guest list revealed a name, Clara Vaughan, a minor actress and Evelyn's former friend who had left the salon early. Her lipstick shade was unknown, a potential match for the pink smudge. Poirot's pulse quickened. Had Clara been Evelyn's midnight conspirator? He questioned a waiter, who recalled Clara near the decanter, her face pale. She seemed nervous, sir, like she wanted to leave. Poirot's gray cells churned. The web was tightening. But the killer's identity remained elusive. The salon's chandeliers flickered, casting long shadows. Poirot stood by the fireplace, the burned scrap in his hand. The guests' whispers grew louder, their eyes wary. Jap, pacing nearby, muttered, "We're close, Poirot, but it's a mess. Letters, vials, scripts, who's pulling the strings?" Poirot's lips curved. The strings, mon ami, are woven by the killer's fear. Celeste's secret threatened ruin, and one of these souls acted to silence her. He felt the killer's confidence, their belief that the salon's chaos would shield them. But Hercule Poirot was not deceived. The clues, lipstick, letter, vial, note, were aligning, pointing to a motive rooted in betrayal. As he moved toward Beatrice's desk, a glint caught his eye, a second vial hidden in a drawer, its cap loose. He lifted it, the faint scent of almonds unmistakable. Chapter 8. The confrontation. Poirot gathered the suspects: Lord Reginald Ashbourne, Evelyn Marlowe, Dr. Victor Hammond, and Beatrice Langston, in the salon's grand hall, their silhouettes stark against the mahogany-paneled walls. The guests, relegated to the periphery, watched with bated breath, their whispers silenced by the gravity of the moment. Poirot's voice, soft yet commanding, cut through the tension like a scalpel. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, pacing with deliberate grace, "the murder of Madame Dubois was a symphony of deceit, played with precision. The poison, cyanide, rare and swift, required knowledge, opportunity, and motive. The truth lies not in one clue, but in their harmony." His gaze swept the suspects, noting each reaction. Reginald's florid cheeks flushed with panic, Evelyn's practiced smile frozen, Hammond's spectacles glinting with unease, Beatrice's notepad clutched like a lifeline. He held up the second vial, its almond scent a silent accusation. "This," he said, pausing for effect, "was found in Mademoiselle Langston's desk, bearing her fingerprints. A damning clue, non?" Beatrice's face crumpled, her voice a whisper. I found it, monsieur. I didn't use it." Her eyes darted toward the exit, and Poirot noted the fear in her posture. He turned to Reginald, producing the forged IOU. "Monsieur Ashbourne, your debts were a burden, oui? Yet this document, it is not Madame Dubois' hand. A forgery, perhaps, to shift suspicion?" Reginald's cigar fell, scattering ash. "Nonsense," he blustered. "I've no skill for such things." His voice cracked, betraying desperation. Evelyn Marlowe, her auburn curls catching the chandelier's light, stood by a marble statue, her shawl fluttering nervously. Poirot's gaze lingered on her. "Mademoiselle Marlowe, your script describes a poisoning, and your note, 'Meet me at midnight, ensure the glass is hers,' suggests a plan, a rehearsal, or a blueprint." Evelyn's pearls snapped under her fingers, a bead rolling across the floor. "A stage note, Monsieur Poirot, nothing more." Her voice was defiant, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of dread. Dr. Victor Hammond, in the anteroom's shadow, clutched his medical bag, now cleared but not absolved. Poirot approached, his tone probing. "Doctor, your vial was missing, its label found in the cellar. Your poems speak of love, but love can turn to vengeance, no?" Hammond's spectacles glinted. "I loved her, Monsieur Poirot. I'd never harm her." His voice broke, and Poirot wondered if grief masked guilt. Inspector Japp, pacing nearby, muttered, "Good Lord, Poirot, it's a circus. Vials, scripts, forgeries, everyone's hiding something." Poirot's lips curved slightly. "Mon ami, the killer hides in plain sight. The letter Madame Dubois burned, it spoke of betrayal. Its fragments pieced together reveal the heart of this crime." He produced a reconstructed letter, painstakingly assembled from the ashes. "Your betrayal will cost you. Your secret will ruin us all." The words hung in the air, a death knell. The guests gasped, their eyes darting to the suspects. Poirot's gray cells churned, sorting the threads. The letter pointed to Beatrice, whose cousin Robert, a known forger, had been dismissed by Celeste for theft. The diary entry, "C knows about R, she'll ruin him," suggested Beatrice acted to protect him. The vial in her desk, bearing her fingerprints, was damning, yet its placement felt staged. Had Beatrice poisoned Celeste, or was she framed? Poirot turned to her, his voice gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle Langston, Madame Dubois threatened to expose your cousin, oui? A forger, dismissed for theft. Did you act to silence her?" Beatrice's notepad fell, her hands trembling. "No, monsieur, I hated her cruelty, but I didn't kill her. Her voice was a sob, and Poirot sensed a truth half-spoken. The forged IOU, its ink matching Beatrice's pen, resurfaced in his thoughts. It implicated Reginald, but its craftsmanship pointed to Beatrice's hand, or her cousin's. Poirot approached Reginald, his tone conversational. Monsieur Ashbourne, your debts were a motive, non? Did you enlist another to forge this IOU to deflect suspicion? Reginald's cheeks flushed. Enlist? I'm no conspirator. His bluster rang hollow, and Poirot noted the sweat on his brow. Evelyn's script and note suggested premeditation, but her pendant was empty, a theatrical prop. Poirot questioned her again. Mademoiselle, your note speaks of a meeting. With whom? Evelyn's smile was brittle. A stage direction, nothing more. Her defiance was unconvincing, and Poirot recalled Clara Vaughan, the minor actress who had left early. Her lipstick shade, still unknown, could match the pink smudge. Had Evelyn conspired with her? Hammond's poems and missing vial pointed to obsession, but his grief seemed genuine. Poirot probed further. Doctor, your vial was stolen. You say. By whom? Hammond's hands clenched. I don't know. Someone took it from my bag. His desperation was palpable, but Poirot wondered if it masked cunning. The pink lipstick smudge remained the enigma. Poirot returned to the crime scene, the shattered glass a silent witness. The lipstick bead tucked in his handkerchief was unmatched to any suspect. A fourth player or a deliberate misdirection? He knelt, his gloved fingers tracing the rug, and found a faint trace of cosmetic powder, perhaps from Evelyn's shawl. It was too convenient, like her handkerchief now cleared of poison. Poirot's mind returned to the letter's fragments. The reconstructed text suggested Celeste had uncovered a scandal, perhaps Robert's forgery, threatening Beatrice's family honor. But the vial's placement in Beatrice's desk felt staged, a frame to divert suspicion. He questioned a waiter who recalled seeing Beatrice near the decanter, her notepad shielding her hands. She was nervous, sir, like she was hiding something. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Hiding or planting? The recovered sapphire necklace, dismissed as a red herring, nagged at him. Its timing, stolen and returned before Celeste's collapse, suggested a distraction. Poirot questioned the dowager, whose indignation was undimmed. Stolen, then returned. This salon is a den of thieves. Her accusation pointed to Evelyn, but Poirot suspected a broader scheme. The salon's chandeliers flickered, casting long shadows. Poirot stood, his small frame radiating authority. The killer, he declared, acted with confidence, believing the salon's chaos would shield them. But Hercule Poirot seized the pattern. He turned to Beatrice, his voice softening. Mademoiselle, the vial in your desk, the forged IOU, the letter's fragments, all point to you. Yet I believe you are not the mastermind. Beatrice's eyes widened, tears spilling. I didn't kill her, monsieur, I swear. Her desperation was raw, and Poirot's gray cells churned. He revealed his deduction. Beatrice had forged the IOU to protect her cousin, but the vial was planted by another. Evelyn's note and script suggested a conspiracy, but her clean pendant cleared her of direct action. Hammond's vial was stolen, his love genuine. The pink lipstick pointed to an unseen hand, perhaps Clara Vaughan, whose absence was too convenient. But Beatrice's fingerprints on the vial were the key. Someone had used her loyalty to frame her. The guests' gasps filled the hall, their eyes wide. Jap, pacing, muttered, Blimey, Poirot, you've got it. But who's the puppet master? Poirot's lips curved. The master, mon ami, is among us. He felt the killer's panic, their web unraveling. Chapter 9. The Confession. The grand hall froze as Beatrice bolted for the door, her slight figure weaving through the stunned guests. Her notepad fell to the floor, pages scattering like autumn leaves, and the vial glinted in her trembling hand. Poirot, with surprising agility for his diminutive stature, intercepted her at the threshold, his voice calm, yet commanding. "Mademoiselle Langston, you cannot flee the truth." His words, soft as velvet, carried a weight that stopped her in her tracks. Beatrice's face crumpled, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. I didn't mean it, monsieur," she sobbed, her voice a broken whisper. "I only wanted to scare her." The guests gasped, their whispers rising like a tide, but Poirot's raised hand silenced them. "Explain, mademoiselle," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "The truth, if you please." Beatrice sank to her knees, the vial slipping from her fingers to clatter on the polished floor. Poirot signaled Inspector Japp, who stood nearby, his broad face etched with astonishment. "Good Lord, Poirot, she's confessing," Japp muttered, motioning for a constable to secure the vial. Poirot's eyes never left Beatrice, his gray cells alert to every nuance of her demeanor. "Mademoiselle," he said, kneeling beside her, "tell Hercule Poirot what you did, and why." The salon's chandeliers flickered, casting long shadows as Beatrice's voice, trembling but clear, began to unravel the mystery. She was going to ruin him," Beatrice whispered, her eyes fixed on the floor. "My cousin Robert, he's a forger, yes, but he's family. Madame Dubois dismissed him for theft last year, threatened to have him arrested. She found out he was working again, forging papers for a client. She said she'd expose him, send him to prison." Her voice broke, and Poirot noted the raw pain in her words. "I begged her to stop, but she laughed, called me a servant, nothing more. I hated her for it." The guests' murmurs grew, but Poirot's gaze remained steady, encouraging her to continue. "I found the vial in Dr. Hammond's bag," Beatrice confessed, her hands twisting together. "He left it unattended during a consultation. I took it thinking I'd scare her, make her back off. I slipped a drop of cyanide into her wine, just enough to make her ill, I thought. But it was too strong." Her sobs echoed in the hall, and Poirot's mind raced. The vial, the fingerprints, the forged IOU, all pointed to Beatrice, but her intent suggested a tragic miscalculation, not cold-blooded murder. Poirot stood, his small frame radiating authority. "Mademoiselle, the lipstick on the glass, it was yours, non? The pink shade, so distinct." Beatrice nodded, tears spilling. I tested the glass to be sure it was hers. I didn't think anyone would notice." Her admission was a dagger, confirming the pink smudge as her mistake. Poirot's gray cells churned, piecing together the puzzle. The burned letter fragments. "Your betrayal will cost you. Your secret will ruin us all." Aligned with Beatrice's motive, protecting her cousin from Celeste's wrath. The forged IOU, its ink matching her pen, was her attempt to shift suspicion to Reginald, whose debts were well known. Poirot turned to the other suspects, their faces a gallery of shock and relief. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, his florid cheeks pale, clutched his cigar stub, his bluster silenced. "I told you, Poirot, I'm no forger," he muttered, but his relief was palpable. Evelyn Marlowe, her auburn curls dimmed by the late hour, stood by the grand piano, her smile replaced by a grimace. The note in her script, "Meet me at midnight, ensure the glass is hers," had suggested conspiracy, but Poirot now saw it as a red herring, perhaps planted by Beatrice to implicate her. "Mademoiselle Marlowe," he said, his tone probing, "your script and note were distractions. Evelyn's pearls gleamed as she nodded. I wrote that note for a role, nothing more." Her voice was defiant, but Poirot sensed her innocence. Dr. Victor Hammond, in the anteroom's shadow, clutched his medical bag, his grief raw. His missing vial, stolen by Beatrice, cleared him of direct involvement. but his poems revealed a love that had clouded his judgment. "Doctor," Poirot said, "your devotion was exploited, no?" Hammond's spectacles glinted with tears. "I trusted her," he whispered, and Poirot noted the pain of betrayal. The recovered sapphire necklace, dismissed as a distraction, resurfaced in Poirot's thoughts. Its theft and return had been a staged diversion, likely orchestrated by Beatrice to sow chaos. He questioned the dowager, whose indignation was undimmed. "Stolen, then returned. A scandal," she huffed, but Poirot saw no connection to the poison. The pink lipstick, Beatrice's careless mistake, was the key that unlocked the mystery. Poirot's voice rose, addressing the hall. The murder of Madame Dubois was born of desperation, not malice. Mademoiselle Langston, driven by loyalty to her cousin, sought to protect him from ruin. But her plan, ill-conceived, turned deadly. Beatrice's sobs grew louder, and Jap, with a grim nod, signaled for the constable to prepare handcuffs. The guests' murmurs swelled, their eyes wide with shock. Poirot's gray cells, however, were not at rest. The confession, though compelling, felt incomplete. Beatrice's intent to scare, not kill, suggested a miscalculation, but the cyanide's potency pointed to expertise. Had someone else ensured the dose was lethal? He revisited the clues: the burned letter, the forged IOU, the vial's label in the cellar. Beatrice's fingerprints on the second vial were damning, but its placement in her desk felt staged, as if to frame her. The note in Evelyn's script, the sequin from her shawl, the cosmetic powder, all were distractions, but whose hand had woven them? Poirot's mind returned to Clara Vaughan, the minor actress who had left early. Her absence, coupled with the unmatched pink lipstick, nagged at him. Had Beatrice acted alone, or was she a pawn in a larger scheme? The salon's chandeliers flickered, casting long shadows. Poirot stood, his small frame radiating authority. "The truth," he declared, "is a delicate thing, easily obscured by fear, but Hercule Poirot sees clearly." He felt the killer's panic, their web unraveling. Beatrice's confession was a breakthrough, but the cyanide's strength suggested a guiding hand. He questioned a waiter who recalled Clara near the decanter, her face pale. "She left just after the scream, sir," he said. Poirot's pulse quickened. Clara, Evelyn's former friend, could be the missing piece. As Jap moved to handcuff Beatrice, a scream pierced the hall. The guests parted, revealing a figure crumpled near the fireplace. A mannequin dressed in Celeste's sapphire gown, its glass eyes glinting. The crowd gasped, and Poirot's eyes narrowed. A distraction, staged to disrupt his revelation. "Mon ami," he said to Jap, "the killer seeks to confuse us even now." He felt the truth slipping into place, but one question remained. Was Beatrice the sole architect, or had another ensured her failure? Chapter 10. The Final Bow. The mannequin, its glass eyes glinting under the chandeliers, stood as a macabre centerpiece, a staged distraction that had briefly thrown the salon into chaos. Poirot's voice, soft yet commanding, cut through the tension. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, pacing with deliberate grace, "the murder of Madame Dubois was a tragedy of betrayal woven with cunning. The poison, cyanide, swift and precise, was no accident. The clues, lipstick, letters, vials, point to a mind both desperate and calculated." His eyes, sharp as polished agate, swept the suspects: Lord Reginald Ashbourne, his florid cheeks pale; Evelyn Marlowe, her auburn curls dimmed; Dr. Victor Hammond, his spectacles glinting with unease; and Beatrice Langston, her face tear-streaked, flanked by a constable. Poirot held up the pink lipstick tube, its shade a perfect match for the smudge on the glass. "This," he said, pausing for effect, "was found in the mannequin's gown, a final attempt to mislead. But Hercule Poirot is not so easily deceived." The guests gasped, their eyes darting to Beatrice, who shook her head frantically. "Not mine, monsieur," she cried. Poirot's lips curved slightly. "Non, mademoiselle. This belongs to another, Clara Vaughan, who fled the salon." The name hung in the air, a revelation that tightened the web. Inspector Japp, his broad face etched with astonishment, stepped forward. "Clara Vaughan? The actress who scarpered early, you're saying she's the killer?" Poirot's gaze was steady. "Mon ami, Clara Vaughan is the key. But let us unravel the threads." He turned to Beatrice, his tone gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle Langston, your confession was heartfelt. You sought to scare Madame Dubois to protect your cousin Robert from her threats. But the cyanide's potency was no accident. Someone ensured it was lethal." Beatrice's sobs quieted, her eyes wide. I only meant to make her ill," she whispered. "The vial was from Dr. Hammond's bag. I took it, but I didn't know it was so strong." Poirot nodded, his gray cells sorting the clues. The vial in Beatrice's desk, bearing her fingerprints, had been planted, a frame to shift suspicion. The forged IOU, its ink matching her pen, was her own work, meant to implicate Reginald. But the pink lipstick, the burned letter fragments, and the note in Evelyn's script pointed to a deeper conspiracy. Poirot turned to the other suspects, their faces a gallery of tension. "Monsieur Ashbourne," he said, "your debts were a motive, but your panic was genuine. The IOU was forged by Mademoiselle Langston, not you." Reginald's cigar stub fell, his relief palpable. "Told you, Poirot. I'm no murderer." His bluster was weak, and Poirot moved on. "Mademoiselle Marlowe," he continued, facing Evelyn, "your script and note suggested a plan, but your pendant was empty, your handkerchief clean. You were a distraction, none?" Evelyn's pearls gleamed as she nodded, her voice soft. "I wrote the note for a role, nothing more. I despised Celeste, but I didn't kill her." Her sincerity rang true, and Poirot's gaze shifted. "Dr. Hammond," he said, "your love for Madame Dubois was exploited, your vial was stolen, your grief genuine." Hammond's spectacles misted with tears. "I'd never harm her," he whispered, and Poirot believed him. The pink lipstick tube was the linchpin. Poirot had traced Clara Vaughan, Evelyn's former friend, through a guest list and staff accounts. Clara, a struggling actress, had been humiliated by Celeste alongside Evelyn, her career ruined by a scathing review. A waiter recalled Clara near the decanter, her face pale, moments before Celeste's collapse. Her lipstick, a rare pink shade, matched the smudge on the glass. Poirot's pulse quickened. Clara had been Beatrice's unwitting accomplice, ensuring the cyanide's lethal dose. Poirot addressed the hall, his voice rising. "Clara Vaughan, driven by resentment, conspired with Mademoiselle Langston's plan. Beatrice sought to scare Madame Dubois, but Clara, with access to the vial, replaced its contents with a fatal dose. The lipstick smudge was her mistake, left when she tested the glass." He held up the burned letter fragments. The letter, warning of betrayal, was Clara's, sent to Celeste to unsettle her. Beatrice burned it, fearing it implicated her cousin. The guests' gasps filled the hall, their eyes wide. Japp, stunned, muttered, "Blimey, Poirot, a conspiracy, but where's Vaughan now?" Poirot's lips curved. "She fled, mon ami, but her trail is clear. The police will find her." He turned to Beatrice, whose sobs had quieted. "Mademoiselle, your loyalty to your cousin blinded you. You forged the IOU to protect him, but Clara used your plan to exact her revenge." Beatrice's voice was a whisper. "I didn't know. I trusted her." Poirot's gaze softened. "Trust, mademoiselle, is a fragile thing." Japp signaled the constable, who gently handcuffed Beatrice. "She'll face trial," Japp said, "and we'll track Vaughan." The mannequin, a final distraction, had been Clara's doing, placed to sow chaos as suspicion closed in. Poirot addressed the guests, his voice resonant. Madame Dubois' death was a tragedy of trust betrayed. Let it be a lesson. Secrets when buried fester. The salon's chandeliers dimmed, their light fading as the guests dispersed, their whispers fading into the night. Poirot adjusted his mustache, his gray cells at rest. The clues, lipstick, letter, vial, note, had aligned, revealing a plot born of resentment and desperation. Beatrice, driven by loyalty, had been manipulated by Clara, whose hatred had turned deadly. The hall emptied, leaving Poirot alone with Jap. "You've done it again, Poirot," Jap said, shaking his head. "How do you see what we miss?" Poirot's smile was faint. "Mon ami, it is the little things, the gray cells they notice." He glanced at the mannequin, its sapphire gown a mirror of Celeste's. The salon, once a stage for elegance, was now a tomb for its secrets. As Poirot prepared to depart, a final thought lingered. Clara Vaughan's flight would not outrun justice, and Beatrice's trial would lay bare her tragic error. The Salon de Velours, its velvet drapes now still, would never forget its darkest night. Poirot stepped into the London fog, his mind already turning to the next mystery, his gray cells ever vigilant.